Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Now we've got through the commercials, we can get underway. So we're here today to talk about how to spot and finance the industry's next top talent. I'm Stuart Clark, I'm from Variety, but more importantly, I'll introduce you to the panel and then we'll get things underway. So to my immediate left, we have Emmanuelle Guilbart, who is the co-CEO of About Premium Content. Next along, we have Keelan, who is Director of Scripted Content at BBC Worldwide, the commercial division of the BBC. And at the end of the three-person line, we have Jeremy Fox, who is here today as CEO of Atrium TV, which is a drama funding club of sorts. I'm sure Jeremy will describe it more eloquently than that. But we're going to look, I think, as drama reaches kind of new levels in terms of ambition, we're going to look at what that means in terms of access to writers who can produce that content, to directors and behind-the-screen talent, and then, of course, to actors, to big-name talent that increasingly we see in TV projects. And we're also going to think about what it means in terms of funding, as, with all of the aforementioned, drama becomes bigger, buzzier, and indeed more expensive. Emmanuelle, I'm going to start off with you because you're next to me. So, Emmanuelle, there's more drama than ever in the market. You come to MIPCOM or MIPTV, there are more drama series launching. In terms of the people on screen, behind the screen, full stop, the level of ambition has changed. When we think about, you work with production companies and you distribute drama, has it become a lot more challenging to get the best names as the competition has increased to do the next big thing in drama?
Yes, I think we can say so. There is definitely an acceleration in terms of volume of drama produced every year. So it has been formalized as a peak TV phenomena. And also in terms of ambition, I think the quality is higher and higher, and definitely is becoming more challenging and competitive for all of us to find the new big thing. So the answer is yes, definitely. So I'm sure you are going to ask how we are going to deal with that.
Yes, but I kind of want to take it right back and think about when a piece of content is in its original form, and in fact when you want to attach a writer, there seems to be kind of a relatively small number of big name writers now who people are competing to get onto their projects. Is that fair that there's almost a kind of an A-list, a premium
Yeah, I think in every
writer?
Country, because we tend to work with very different countries across Europe, where there has been an increase in the level of drama everywhere. I mean, some countries like UK were far ahead, but other European countries have been emulated and now are increasing in qualities. And I think everywhere, in every single country, there is the same problem of lack of good writers, and that's the biggest challenge for all producers, is to find the best script writers. At the same time, I also have the feeling that there is people want to be secured with big names, big franchises, big brands. And of course, this is important because it helps to stand out from the big competition. But we shouldn't forget also all the rest of the world, and where you don't have a franchise, you don't have a brand, but you just have someone having a great idea, and maybe less big names and other talents which need to be challenged and managed and mixed and worked with.
Liam, how do you kind of square the circle, if you like, when people are speaking to potential buyers and partners, they want to see a big name writer attached, but the numbers mean that that's not always going to be the case, or it's going to be a challenge in order to get hold of the right writing talent?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult sometimes to square that circle, but I think the great thing about being allied to the BBC is it's incumbent upon them and us, by definition, to break new writers, to break new talent. So it's a mixed economy, really. I think, I mean, if you look back at one of our biggest hits, Sherlock, arguably Benedict wasn't a huge star when he entered that show, and the BBC made him into the star he is today. So,
although the writing talent was pretty established,
that's an absolute given. So that's where it all starts, really, the writing talent, and that of course you're constantly looking to get the A-list talent, the best of talent out there for the shows that you're looking after, but also you're looking at who is the next, who's on the cusp. So we're constantly looking at theatre writers, writers who are in continuing series, the soaps back home, seeing who's at that level that can make the step up into making a 9 o'clock drama.
Was Paula's an example of that, of a writer coming through?
Paula was that. So that was made by a production company that we've got a stake in, Cuba Pictures, and Conor McPherson is a very, very well-known, established theatre playwright, and they asked him if he fancied a crack at television, and that was a 3-parter for BBC Two, and worked very well.
But in pure commercial terms, when BBC Worldwide sales team are here, over there, and they're sitting down with buyers, don't buyers want the comfort of not necessarily someone who's making their first leap into TV? It's going to make the sell a bit more challenging, isn't it?
To a certain extent, and a 3-parter on its own is a difficult sell as well. But I don't think you can underestimate the weight of a BBC transmission. It goes a long way, and the fact that it's been through that machine, that commissioning machine of that they don't take bets lightly on these people. They're known for nurturing talent, so that goes a long way as well. And the fact that it's a thriller, it was a 3-part crime series essentially.
Jeremy, I'd like to ask you the question about writing talent, and I think you could almost answer it twice over. Once from an Atrium perspective, where perhaps you've got license to take some risks, but also as chairman of DRG, a big distribution company, you must also recognise the challenge commercially of not having a big name writer on a drama project when it comes to market.
Yeah, actually the problem probably isn't from our end. The problem is the broadcaster end, because there's a fear factor here that if you're going to take a risk on what is, as you've said, get more and more expensive drama, you want to spread your bets. And one of the ways of spreading your bet is to take a triple A-list writer and put them in the hot seat because fear of failure. I mean, interestingly, you're right, with the Atrium project, we can take a few risks. We've got a project, Perfect People, which is based on a novel, so there's some IP there already. And then we brought in a really experienced showrunner, Adi Hassak, who's got Shades of Blue on the air, and then he brought in a junior writer to do the work, supervised by him. So he would argue we're just getting him cheap. I would argue we're training someone up. So, that is another way of working this way. And the other way, of course, is the writer's room, because that's becoming much more common. And you can bring people on and nurture that talent very easily through that system. As long as you've got your showrunner at the top, with his name on the top, you can bring on some younger people.
And then just to, I'm not sure I described, just so the audience, if they're not familiar with Atrium, it's not a broadcaster, but you are effectively putting stuff together for partners who will put it on a platform. Can you just set that up just so it's clear? Well,
you wrote about it very elegantly, so although you did interview me. The Atrium project is very straightforward. We have Netflix and Amazon are out there in the big wide world, incredibly competitive, high-end drama. But in almost every territory in the world, there is another OTT player, SVOD player. And usually they're telcos. So they're the likes of Orange in France and Telefonica in Spain and Deutsche Telekom and so on. And so, and Viaplay, in fact, in the Nordics. So our concept was, let's approach these people, let's get them into a club, and we called it a club, a commissioning club. We'll do the work, so we'll find the writers, we'll find the projects, and we'll present the projects to our members. And if enough members buy in, we can get that project made. They get A-list talent, $5-6 million an hour productions, but they pay a fraction of the price.
Liam, I would like to talk about McMafia, because in terms of working with writers, that's a really interesting project where kind of non-fiction has become fiction. It looks
good, doesn't it?
It does. It does.
Brilliant.
I think you've got the guaranteed audience already. But that's in terms of thinking about writing talent, how you can work with writers. That's somewhat unusual, and this is not based on a novel, but it is based on a non-fiction book about the crime world. I mean, what's the process of then?
I mean, that's the beauty of Cuba Pictures. Really, it's part of the Curtis Brown writing agency. So they've obviously got hundreds of top quality writers on their books. That McMafia originally came from a factual book, as you say, by Misha Glenny, and then they had the idea of making a fictionalized version of that world. And again, it's a bit to what Jeremy was saying, really, getting A-list talent, Misha Hossein Amini, James Watkins, top quality director, and then they got a little bit of a writer's room around them, so people like David Farr, Peter Harness, Laurence Correa, so, you know, people with really good credentials behind them. Got the BBC One commission. It's obviously, you can see from the show on screen there, it's an expensive show, but with that talent behind it, we felt confident to fill the deficit before anyone else was on board.
No wonder there's shortage of writers, and most of them
are working on that show. Yeah.
It's interesting. In fact, Jeremy, if I come back to you, because we have to be clear that whereas in some territories there are certain big writers that everyone's going after, in other parts of the world, whether it's because you know, they're more skewed towards cinema, or their industries are at different stages. That isn't the case, is it? And I know it's something you've been working on in terms of bringing new writing talent through.
Yes, actually, in two places. One, you know, we represent NRK, the state broadcaster in Norway, and what they felt was that the Danes were getting all the good stuff, and everyone else in the Nordics was in second place. So they brought in a new head of drama who came from the film world, and then we stepped in and said we can help you increase these budgets. So we put deficit finance into the NRK properties, and quite a few Norwegian shows, ending up with Nobel, which, you know, won the Rose d'Or, and what's changed there is they have you know, Norwegian drama is selling around the world, and we've got our first Norwegian drama that's sold in America, you know, on a main channel in America, and you wouldn't have, it's subtitled as well. You just wouldn't have thought that 5 years ago. I always said to them, I'm not going to be able to sell this in the States. There's the other region we've helped in, which I think if you want to call up that clip, I can talk to that. So as you can see, we're specialists in comedy. All those programs you saw there started life in the Nordics, in Finland, Norway, I think, most of them. And we did a deal with, in particular, with HBO Europe. And they had a problem in the CE countries with that lack of writing talent. And you know, the old Soviet bloc, you know, used to have a fantastic film industry, and the writers, they were aging, and they were still in the film business, and they, unlike most of the rest of the world, didn't, you know, move over to TV. So HBO's problem was, how do we train up writers? And their solution was take formats from other territories, and in particular from the Nordics, get their writers to basically redo them for their territory. And it's not just a rewrite, it's you have to do some work, and you have to work on the sensibilities of those countries. They got more, I noticed they got more and more violent as you went on. But, and that trained those writers up, so they became, you know, in those territories, you know, moving up to A-list. Of course, we shot ourselves in the foot doing this, because HBO said, thanks very much, we got some great writers, we don't want any formats anymore. That was that.
So you won't be doing that again?
No, but we're doing it, oddly, we're doing it heavily in the States now. Eyewitness was a good example. You know, we've done it it started life in Norway, it's been in Central and Eastern Europe, and then it went to the States, which, you know, getting you know, foreign formats on in the States is a big game.
Emmanuelle, we were speaking ahead of time. You made an interesting point about the importance of the director and the writer, and in fact, perhaps in the film world, the director has always had a very central role and been very important, and perhaps now we are seeing that becoming the case in TV.
Yeah, I have this feeling. As you were pointing out, the first criteria is obviously the scripts when you are talking drama, and it remains the most important piece of material to really decide on the quality of a drama. But it's true that I feel that more and more the quality of photography, the quality of direction is something very important, and we care a lot about that because it's a way also to reach quality and to stand out also among the wide competition. So we care more and more about that also, where, as you were saying, it was more a cinema criteria in the old days being 5 years ago.
Yes. I mean, in terms of writers and directors, when people are in such demand, does it change the timelines? Does it mean when you're thinking about content that's coming through that you're now perhaps planning for 2019, 2020, you're kind of thinking much longer term, and that's for anyone?
I think you have to. I think you know there are certain talent that you just have to bide your time and wait for. You know, particularly if it's on BBC One or any of the main linear channels, you just have to wait for them to be ready. I mean, we've got a big project, Good Omens, that we're doing with Amazon at the moment. The BBC Studios are making. You know, that's been in gestation for, you know, a good number of years. They're in production now, but it took a long time to get made because of Neil Gaiman's availability. So, but it's some things you've just got to play the long game really, and get it as quickly as you possibly can.
Yeah, I mean, there's absolutely no shortcuts in this. I mean, we've also got a show with BBC Studios, Fandorin, which is a Russian detective series, which BBC. It's been around so long, it used to belong to BBC Productions, and then it went to BBC Studios. And it wasn't until we brought on a really good producer from outside, who joined them, who did Broadchurch, and he found the ideal writer, a writer who happened to have read all the books, and it just came together sort of magically. Finally we got the right person. But we've got another project, which actually we announced last March, Saigon. We bought the book rights. And the writer we wanted, every time he was ready to go, he got picked up for another project and another project and another project. He promises me he'll start in the new year when he's finished with Netflix.
I have another funny story, just in the same idea. We are developing a remake of Valkyrian, which is an NRK show also in the UK. And there was a window of opportunity with the commissioner, and the producer was picking up a good writer, but not an A-list writer, because no one was available and we had to wait too long. And she didn't want to miss the window of opportunity, so she picked up a good B-list writer, thinking we would be super safe and respecting the timeline. But the B writer was called a few weeks later for a big show in LA. So just that was not the...
So they went off to Netflix as well.
Exactly. So shortage of writers, definitely.
But I guess paradoxically, that while you might have to plan further ahead and there are no shortcuts, in terms of getting the best IP, in a sense you may have to move faster. You may have to make decisions more quickly because everyone just wants that content. So the production companies you're working with, or when you see good stuff, the deals kind of get done in the room and very fast nowadays. Do you sense?
Yeah, well, everyone's looking for a shortcut. Where, you say there are no shortcuts. There aren't in terms of getting the right writers. But what you then try and do is back the best talent behind the writers. So there are certain producers that we've backed or are involved with that we know have got fantastic writer relationships. So you kind of hoping that something will come of that where they're pitching a project that a writer really is passionate about and wants to get involved in.
And you mentioned Good Omens, and that's obviously that's going to be a big show scale and ambition. I know John Hamm just came on, didn't he, last week? But in terms of the actual talent, in terms of getting actors, with TV now, is it completely open? I mean, Jeremy, can you target any actor, any movie actor, and go to them with a film project, or is there still this kind of rarefied level of they wouldn't do TV?
Only Tom Cruise. Everyone, and there's a reason for this. That when we did a presentation to our members on Sunday here, and all the presenters were the writers, and that's unusual for a start. So, in effect, buyers in the room listening to a pitch from a writer, which one of the writers said. He stood up and said, "I spend my entire life sitting in a room on my own, so it's delighted to meet people." And he really meant that. When a writer does a pitch, it's usually to a commissioning editor in a room. There's two or three, maybe a producer, but it's 2 or 3 people. This was in a big room, and a writer presenting his vision. All of them said, "I can get the top talent for this." And the reason, and 4 of the writers were American, 2 were British. The reason they thought they could was that there are windows of opportunity to pick this talent. They're doing a movie, then there's a gap, then there's another movie. Sometimes they like staying close to home, so they'll do something because it's maybe 6 or 8 weeks close to home. And they. In the printed stuff, in America, what they do is they print these brochures and they show you that they've got these major talents. They haven't. It's just for illustration. What we insisted on doing was we said in the printed material, don't put a famous face in it because the buyer automatically says, so Fandorin's going to be played by X. But in the room, you can talk about the sort of people you can get. And I was pretty impressed by people saying, I can get this talent. One of our writers, got Jennifer Lopez to do a drama. She did it because she liked the material.
Which is Adi Hassak and Shades of Blue.
Yeah. So so when he put up a slide saying, I can get this A-list talent, I believe him.
It's creatively liberating, isn't it? I mean, for them to do something in a longer format. We had Nicole Kidman for the Jane Campion show. We've Top of the Lake we've just done, and we're often finding that it's a new world for TV, and it's not just peculiar to Europe. True Detective was an example in the US, but for them it's really exciting to be able to do that kind of long form.
You say long form, but you're not going to get Nicole Kidman to do a returning 10-part series.
Well, I beg to differ. No, I mean it's.
No, but you take.
She's doing Big Little Lies again.
That's true. That's her.
Yeah. The other thing you do is kill them off. That's the easiest thing.
Kill your A-listers.
Yeah, why not? Bring another one.
But okay, so maybe that was a bad example on my part. However, backtracking quickly. We're seeing a lot of limited series. We're seeing, I know you're not BBC Network, but there's a lot of 3-5-parters coming out. Is that because you can get talent for that window, for those shorter formats, do you think?
Sometimes. I mean, I remember when I started at Worldwide and people were saying, we need 13-part returnable series. And of course, yeah, we do. We'd love those kind of shows. But the strength of the BBC is that it's always been about the mini-series. And, it's about the range and mix of drama programming that's out there. So I've always said we should just celebrate that, and shows that like Paula that we talked about before, just a 3-parter closed-ended series, but utterly brilliantly written. And why not go out there with pride with that kind of show? I think it needs to be celebrated for what it is, because the BBC's not going to change. It's a license fee funded organisation.
And you have more and more appetite from broadcasters for short series, actually, now. Looking for event series that are not returning, and they're very happy with it.
Well, it's less risky, really. If it goes wrong, it's over in 2 weeks' time. So, that's another advantage.
And they're also facing more and more competition, so they are looking for events, and a short drama on 2, 3, 4 evenings is an event.
which could be a great kind of tentpole in their programming grid, but then distribution companies also need returning. They surely need volume and returning series. That was always the thing that
we need everything. No, we need good stuff.
I echo that. If you asked us what we'd want, we want another Doc Martin. Seen has been running 8 years. Actually, we'd like him to do it every year. He does it every other year. Yes, we'd like that. But you're right. We can also pick up something shorter and turn it into an event. And again, you're right, the talent will do that. Even long-running series. I mean, Game of Thrones is a good example of putting some big names in it.
And killing
and then kill them. I mean, Charles Dance was down here on Sunday, and he told us that, he had an idea for a new show, and he was discussing it with them, and then Peter Dinklage killed him while on the lavatory, which wasn't much fun. But, it allowed him to come down. Thankfully, he was dead, so it allowed him to come down here and pitch his next show.
And Peter Dinklage is Quasimodo.
They're the exec producers of the show.
Executing it.
And we were talking, if we talk about returning series, the fact of having big cast, which sometimes is less available than a regular cast, may delay the delivery of your following season. So sometimes it's a problem because you have to wait too long. And we know that the broadcasters like to have your second and third season, short enough.
Sherlock was the best example, wasn't it?
Exactly.
Want me to talk about Sherlock?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, again, I think they were feature films in their own right. So, again, we had about 12 episodes in total, but it's still one of BBC Worldwide's most successful dramas, and it couldn't have been made, that show, as a 10-part returning series. It would have been a very, very different show. Forget about the talent availability, because obviously that was a problem once they got huge. But Stephen, the writer, couldn't and wouldn't want to have written a 10-part returning series. That's not what that Sherlock was. So, again, it's about celebrating the show that you have.
Does everything that we're talking about, does it change the role of the distributor, the distribution company? I don't know if it's misremembering, but I remember kind of just reporting on deals getting done at MIPCOM 10 years ago, and it seemed it was a case of distribution company turning up with fantastic product, finding a customer and a deal getting done. Whereas now the distributor almost feels like a co-producer in many respects. Is that fair?
I think it's changed totally. I mean, you're absolutely right. When we all used to live in the bunker here, and we took our 6 episodes of whatever we had, and we were salesmen. Well, not anymore. We have to be creative. We're financiers, certainly, and probably salespeople last. So what we've done at DRG and you've done in spades at the BBC is bring on production company. We've got 15 first look deals. You have to have them so that you bring the talent with you. You're involved in that script from, well, actually you've paid for it probably, but you're involved from day one.
Yeah.
Liam, I remember, I think when we were chatting ahead of time, and I referred to Worldwide as a distributor. You were like,
No, I do balk at that now. It's because it's absolutely, to Jeremy's point, and I'm sure you'd agree as well. It's we're content creators. When we're standing behind, everything's gone up a notch in terms of the level of finance needed. So we've got to stand behind these shows in a big way in terms of funding. That means that we've got to take really big editorial decisions. So we as much as possible we're trying to facilitate getting that drama made, but you've got to take an editorial decision about whether that drama is going to work for you and where it's going to work and how it's going to work. So and given that we're involved with so many production companies now and talking to them on a daily basis, the old world of distribution, although it's absolutely fundamental to what we do, it isn't the only thing we do. So I do balk at that. Yeah.
But the buyer's market's changed too, because 5 years ago we couldn't sell. There was no SVOD business. We weren't. In fact, when we started selling to Netflix, I think we had to sell through BBC Worldwide because they didn't want to talk to a little guy like us. And, you know, as it grew, so
good old days.
The good old days. Sorry, we had to take that back. It was the commission that they took that was a killer. No, I think we all have to adapt to those SVOD players and their needs, and that's sort of how Atrium came about. We were finding that those buyers were not buying the stuff off the shelf. They weren't going to the LA screenings and buying 10 episodes of some NBC series. Well, mostly because NBC decided to sell them all to Netflix. But actually, those type of American network series don't work on SVOD services. You know, that if you're paying, and I feel this myself, if I'm paying for something, and I have Amazon, Netflix, Sky, I have it all, if I'm paying for it, I want higher quality, and I sort of want it now as well. I'm not going to wait week after week. Because I'm only paying a license fee for the BBC, I'm happy to wait week to week to see the next thing. And I want my BBC stuff to be British and, you know, written by British people. You know, it's public money. And you know, we represent NRK, and they feel exactly the same way.
And Emmanuelle, you work in, you know, you have lots of non-English language drama, you know, lots of the international markets. Do you also think of yourselves as kind of distribution company, part financier, part co-producer?
We call ourselves co-pro distributors because, as it was pointed out, we are coming very early on the projects, so increasing our financial risks and sometimes becoming a co-producer as long as being a distributor. And also being there, advising, bringing an international eye, and it's also more risky, but it's also more interesting and more efficient to be early on, to talk about marketing, to talk about commercial strategy, to see if it would be more an SVOD show or more a mainstream show or more a pay TV show. So it's very important to be able to discuss all those aspects early on.
Could most of the change we're talking about be at its root? Could we trace it back to those SVOD players? Is that what has driven all of this change and ultimately lots of fantastic drama that, you know, you guys all have?
I don't know if they are driving. It's a new force. It's a new world. So it broadens the different segments of drama we can sell internationally. So it's the most interesting. I don't know if they're driving the business because the broadcasters are still financing a lot. So.
Yeah, but I think we've all upped our game. I mean, that's what they've done. We have had to up our game. You look at Night Manager, you know, the BBC, that's something, it looked cost absolutely fantastic too, I know, but it looked great, and the audience become more and more demanding. You know, still in the UK, if you look at the top 10 programs in the UK, there's still the soaps. It's still Coronation Street and, you know, EastEnders, which by the way is where some of these writers learn their craft. But the things that stand out is when you get a Sherlock, and the way the BBC promote it. I know it's a long gap, but you anticipate it. You know, Doc Martin, we've got 50 episodes. It's taken 10 years to get there. 10 years.
Will the drama market keep heating up as, you know, all this A-list talent on camera and all these huge writers, you know, do more and more ambitious work? Will things carry on getting more expensive? I'm not talking about peak drama in terms of volume, but just in terms of kind of the costs, and is the trajectory just going to keep on going like that as it has done in the past 5-6 years, do you think?
Well, it's rising, and it's been exponential, hasn't it, over the past couple of years. Again, I think it's important, you know, while those big event dramas, McMafia and others, are absolutely huge and really, really important to the BBC, you shouldn't forget shows like Happy Valley, Broken, Silent Witness. They're all really, really important. Unforgotten on ITV. You know, really, really solid, not really well written shows that more than do a job for those networks and sell very well internationally as well. So again, it's a mixed economy.
But there is a volume problem. I mean, there are 500 drama series coming out of America this year. 500, and you know, in a market like ours in the UK, where are they going? Because, you know, the BBC will buy none, quite rightly, public money. Make your own stuff. ITV, one, maybe. Channel 5 buy a few, Channel 4 buy 3 or 4. Sky have their deals with HBO and Showtime. So some poor salesman's out there with the other 400 working out where to place them in a competitive market like the UK. So you see great stuff on cable in the UK now. You got to find it, but there's an awful lot of stuff out there. So you've got to stand out above the crowd.
The other trend also is that there are more and more broadcasters commissioning original drama. So when before they were commissioning 1 or 2 and buying a lot, now they are commissioning more and then buying less. So I think the balance also between commissioning and acquisitions is changing.
And what would have once been considered kind of local content will now travel as well. We're seeing that non-English language content will go to UK, US.
Yeah, that's something new since a few years. So non-English content is traveling, or of course not as much as English language yet. And also the fact that Netflix is commissioning local content is also an interesting trend, where they, on the contrary of the other big players commissioning big English language shows spreading out the world, they have made the choice of commissioning Nordic, French, Spanish, English, whatever, from everywhere. So that's very interesting also, other trend.
If Netflix and Amazon and, of course, the other streaming players really changed the game, what we're now seeing is in terms of talent and ambition, we're seeing kind of another wave, aren't we, with the technology companies, Apple, Facebook, etc., coming in. Is that going to kind of, are we on the cusp of yet another period of flux, another kind of revolution in terms of drama, in terms of ambition and so forth?
Well, these guys can buy us all tomorrow, can't they? I mean, that's the truth of it. So when they get in, they're giants and they will change the landscape again. Are there still room for us poor distributors? Yeah, to me it's just more platforms. There's more places to sell to. And I think that's a good thing for the production community, more opportunities. So I don't see a downside unless you're going to be gobbled up by one of these companies. That often isn't a downside either. But I think, no, I see that. And I think, to the language point, I mean, a couple of breakthroughs. I mean, Narcos, was a breakthrough. It's half in Spanish, it's half subtitled, and you certainly don't think like that. And we've, selling a Norwegian drama to mainstream TV in America with subtitles. That's the market that just doesn't buy subtitles, but they're starting to, and I think Netflix actually has helped us in that way.
I can see that we're pretty much out of time. So let me just ask you to join me in saying thank you to our talent, Emmanuelle, Liam, and Jeremy. Thank you very much.